counterfeiting, here's what I have now nicknamed the counterfeit case in the exhibit. This was something that counterfeits were so fascinating to me, and when I started kind of digging in our collection, I said, do we have any counterfeits in the collection? We did actually get rid of a large number of our counterfeits, but we did still have a few lingers around, and we had a few things that had that Gucci question mark. And I said, question mark, does that mean it's a counterfeit? And in one case, it actually did mean it was, and there was a lot of fun investigating going on. But to give you a little bit of background about the counterfeit industry, the counterfeit industry to date is a $600 billion industry. That's huge. So this is counterfeiting not only of fashion, but there's counterfeiting of medicine, of brakes, car brakes, pretty much contact lenses, everything you can imagine. And if you guys have an opportunity in Washington, D.C., I think for the next now 4 years, they have an exhibit, and it's called Counterfeit Crimes. So it actually goes through the whole kind of history, not even history, but it shows all the different ways that you can counterfeit. So that'll be up for the next 4 years, and I think it's in the space where America's Most Wanted was playing, so it's in the Crime Museum. So with this, for a lot of the research that I had done for counterfeits, I found it quite fascinating that almost every single counterfeit sale of a fashion product is always linked to the drug trade, and it's often linked even to terrorist groups. And to me, I said, I'm supporting a terrorist organization, and I found that quite shocking, and I really had to question some of the people, and I said, how do you know that? Did you actually trace the money? And they said, actually, we did. A lot of these people had worked with the FBI, and they had actually traced the money back to a lot of terrorist organizations. And they actually did, we even did a flow chart of where the money went. And it was amazing to actually see that it does actually support many of the drug trades and the terrorist organizations. But for me, one of the things that I was most horrified by was the child labor. I said, okay, I'm familiar, unfortunately, there is child labor that does go on, and I said, but to what extent? And Harper's Bazaar, for I think about 7 years, had done an issue every January where they, it was called their counterfeit issue, and they touched on a different point about counterfeits. But the worst story that I had read was they had raided a factory, and what they had done, or what they had seen, was there was a bunch of children, and they had actually broken their legs, and they had put them in a cross-legged position, and they had actually bandaged them up so that they would heal in that cross-legged position. They had also handcuffed them to the sewing machines, and they were feeding them less than a little bowl of rice a day. And I said, wow, okay, that's the counterfeit industry, and that's the nasty part of it. So they were covering a lot of these. So if you look in historic, well, it's not even that historic. I think it was even in 2010 that they were covering a lot of these counterfeit issues. But that's all the parts that we don't really see. So with this, I'll kind of go into, because I was most curious about what do counterfeits look like in the 21st century or today, and how do people actually purchase them but not necessarily know that they might be purchasing them. But before that, I'll give you a little bit of the lay of the land with this. You'll see kind of sprinkled throughout, we have different bags that say you can't fake fashion, so I'll get into that in just a minute. But on the left, you'll see is an authentic pair, or an authentic piece, and then on the right is the counterfeit of it. So I knew for this that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see all these details, so I had worked very closely with our photographer and a few different people to actually photograph these and to give you details on how you could spot all the different counterfeits. But getting to what does a counterfeit look like in the 21st century, I wanted to know, well, if I go online and if I purchase a counterfeit, what is the process of it? And luckily, our director said, well, go for it, but don't publicize it too much that you're doing this. This isn't really something the museum wants to be associated with. But I was curious about what does it look like. So I had known that we had, on the left you see it's Christian Louboutin, and it's his Penzi shoe. And his Penzi shoe was a very famous shoe, and for his 20th anniversary he had re-released it. So it was all of a sudden back on the market and in very high demand. So I simply Googled Christian Louboutin Penzi, and almost immediately a number of URLs came up, and there was ChristianLouboutin.com, and then there was a lot of other things that said Christian Louboutin outlet, Christian Louboutin on sale, a lot of different URLs, and so I started clicking on them to see what would happen. So I was clicking on them, and what I found interesting was what most people don't realize is there can be one website, but on this one I found over 75 different URLs that were attached to this website. So the problem is most people say, well, just shut down the website. Well, you could shut down one URL, but there's still 74 others that are still up there. So it's kind of, they call it the whack-a-mole problem, that you can whack one mole, but then another one just pops right up. So with this, what was interesting is, if we just kind of look and study the website really quick, a lot of interesting things. If you look all right here, they have all of these things that McAfee security, which I think McAfee is quite outdated now, but at one point it was a very relevant security system. But they have all these things trying to really prove the fact that this is a very safe, authentic website. If you go on ChristianLouboutin.com, he doesn't have any of that. So they're really trying to sell you that you're on a very safe website. There's worldwide free shipping, that there's a discount for 3% discount for one pair and a 5% discount for 2 pairs or more. Christian Louboutin, his shoes are in such high demand, he doesn't have to put his shoes on sale for you, and he's not going to necessarily offer you a discount. But what is interesting is they did actually put the original price of the shoe, which was $893, and they're selling it for $134. So you think, oftentimes, maybe you really want that pair of Louboutins. So you're willing to pay $134. You think, great, I'm going to get this image right, or I'm going to get this shoe right here. Well, I always say with a counterfeit, what you see is very rarely what you actually get. They had actually taken this image from Christian Louboutin's website, put it on the counterfeit website. What happened next was quite interesting. So you see, here's the image that I thought I was going to get. What you see is the sample photo sent for approval. They had actually sent me an email and they said, we made a sample of the shoe for you. Does it meet your requirements, or do you like it? And I said, I've never ordered a pair of shoes from Nordstrom or from Barney's, and they actually send me a photo to approve the sample. And me being kind of the fashion historian and just the curious consumer, I said, no, it's completely all wrong. I said, first of all, the fabric is wrong, the color is wrong, but most importantly, the contrast is wrong. If you notice the flower is outlined in yellow, and everything with Louboutin, most often, it always contrasts. That's the whole thing with the red sole and the other in the shoe. So it doesn't contrast. So I said, I sent them all the specs and I sent it back to them. Most consumers probably didn't do that, but I wanted to have something that was very close for the exhibition, so I put a lot of effort into this email. Also, the English was very off. And so I then, I think about a week and a half later, I got a shoe in the mail, and I said, wait, I thought that they were going to send me another sample photo. Well, they sent me this shoe, and I like to say that our photographer did a very nice job of making this shoe look very pretty. When you start looking at it, though, it's not so pretty. So we have the original, and I will say with the one that he reproduced, the heel is a little bit higher. It's not this high, though. So we then get into it. So if we look at up top right here, we have lots of jagged stitching. We have vinyl instead of leather. We have some more crooked stitching down here. And then we have this glossy red coating and shipping. Not quite to Louboutin standards. But we continue on. So for the original, they have a beautiful functional snap closure. Or you can get a piece of elastic as the closure, and it's not quite functional. And if you notice, if you look really closely right here, the adhesive is actually oozing out of the shoe. So they don't put it together very nicely. But the best part, which was really the icing on the cake, was I got this card to authenticate my purchase, and it said, we certify the authenticity of this item and confirm that it has been subject to the most exacting quality control. Its high quality is a symbol of the fine reputation of the trademark. And I said, not. That was, to me, was just so interesting that they're really trying to push this. But if you look at it, oftentimes it's quite rare that you'd have the authentic next to the original piece when you're actually purchasing one of these. So as I said, that I knew that there's this case, and the case was a very interesting curatorial study because we had to do a lot to actually make this case happen. for it, we had to work very closly with our conservators, and as some of you might learn with conservation, they have very, very specific requirements. So one of them was that our conservator said, okay, you can have a case, and it doesn't have to have any plexi over it, and I said, really? I said, great, okay, so we don't have any glare going, so I had that going my way, but I knew that we couldn't have the viewer simply walk onto the platform and start grabbing a bag and looking on the inside. So I said, well, how am I actually going to show people all of these differences? And I said, well, if I can convince our photographer to take a lot of photos and then to Photoshop them and to retouch them, maybe we'll have something that will work. So this is our photographer, Eileen, and she had photographed, I think, maybe 150 photos. She then spent many hours making sure that they were color corrected and everything, and I had then worked with our technology development team, and I had to study each one of these bags very carefully, and I just simply wrote on a piece of paper on the photo, I need an arrow going here, and then they had photoshopped and put this all together for me. But finding the information was another interesting study and practice, in that you simply can't Google, well, what is a Chanel 255 bag? What are the typical elements? You can't really rely on the internet for really, really good information. Wikipedia is good if you want kind of some basic information, but for this one I said, if I'm supposed to be the authenticator on this, this information really has to be correct. So I did speak to every single one of the legal teams from every brand that was represented in the exhibition, and I said, great, well, they'll just tell me the information. Not the case. They will tell you about the company, they will tell you about their products, they're not going to give away all the details of their bags, and one company had even said, well, we don't want to give away all of the secrets of what our bag is. And I said, well, I could just go into a Chanel store and I could pick up one of the bags and just have a good visual memory and write down, okay, the quilting matches up and whatnot. But I didn't really want to do that because I thought that might be a bit weird. But what I did do was that most of the luxury brands, if they have a very long history and if they have their heritage collections, they produce these lovely books. And in the books, they actually will show all the signatures of very specific bags. The Chanel 255 bag being a signature of the Chanel company. If you're not familiar, the 255 bag, it refers to February of 1955 when she had actually released the bag. So this bag has been around since 55 and is a huge signature in the Chanel company and has recently been kind of the trending item I've noticed. So if we look at this, some of the signature details and elements are, it is 24 karat gilded chain, so it's not solid gold, but it's gilded in gold. One of the reasons why the bag is quite expensive. I think they start at about $5,000. It is a beautiful lamb skin leather, and if you notice that all of the diamond quilting, you could start from any line and it goes all the way across seamlessly. They very, very meticulously make sure that all of that lines up. But what was interesting is, in the exhibit, whenever I give a tour, I said, so we have this bag and we have this bag, which one do you think is the original? And about 99% of the time, everyone says, that's the original. And I said, well, it's actually the fake. And I said, well, what makes you think it's the original? And they often say, well, it has the Chanel logo on it. What most people don't know is that Chanel actually originally designed this bag with the Mademoiselle lock. And so this is the original lock, and when Karl Lagerfeld joined the company, he switched it to the double C logo. And of course we have logomania going on, so it makes a lot of sense. So if we look at the fake, we start to see a few of the differences, but it probably would fool most people if you're from a distance. And so you'll see that they didn't use the lambskin, but he also, Chanel does a second version in a caviar leather. So it has kind of almost this little pebbled effect to it. And they're trying to imitate that here. And so what they've done is that they have a little bit of a thicker quilting. So it looks like this nice supple leather. It's not, it's probably more of a vinyl. And they have the interlocking double C logo. And it's a metal plated chain. If we look at the back of the original, it has this beautiful, very graceful curve right here. But if you notice that the diamond quilting, it's somewhat, this one completely aligns, once again, if you go all the way across. Then if we look at this one, it's quite different. The pocket is smaller, it's not quite centered. The stitching does not line up at all, pretty much anywhere on the bag. And the curve is not quite elegant as the other one. It had that nice, kind of very angular, beautiful curve. So we look on the inside of the Chanel bag. I love this bag too because it is so functional. It had a place for your mirror, it had a lipstick pocket, and it had a compact pocket so you could touch up your makeup. And then it has the Chanel logo in the center, and it has a gold snap as well. If you look at the inside, this is really where we're starting to notice the difference, where you could see this horrible puckering of all that vinyl. The logo is a bit smaller and it has a silver magnet here, but if you notice to me, it was all that puckering of the leather. The Chanel company would never release a bag that looked like this. It always has to be perfect, and oftentimes from luxury companies, if it's not perfect, they'll actually destroy and burn the bag because they don't even want it in the market at all. So if it's not perfect, they oftentimes destroy it. But if we look here on this chain, if you'll notice here that they've actually taken a piece of vinyl, they have folded it in half, and then they have stitched it so it looks like it's a very thick piece of vinyl, or it's supposed to look like leather. For the original 255 bag, it's just a very nice piece of a single piece of cut leather. And then apparently when they were sewing, or when they were screwing this screw in right here, they might have misted it. So it's cut right here. It has a little bit of a nick. We move then on to the Jacquio bag from Gucci. This was the bag that gave me the biggest problem, where I really couldn't figure it out, and I almost went to the Gucci company and said, I can't tell the difference, can you guys? But there was one dead giveaway. So we have the original here, an adjustable strap, we have the metal piston closure. If we look at this one, it looks exactly the same. Gucci did do the navy, the red, and then the navy stripe at one point. It has the adjustable strap, it has the metal piston closure. It is actually made of a very nice leather. And here we even have the trademark on both of the bags. And why I actually thought that this one might be the original and the other one might be the counterfeit is this even has, it's a Gucci crest. So this is the little zipper pull, and it has a knight holding two suitcases. This was something that Gucci used as their trademark, and they trademarked it in 1955. And here you can see is the patent for the Gucci crest and the trademark that they had filed. So this was something that was on all of the Gucci bags. And I said, why is it on the counterfeit, not on the original? Somebody might have taken it off. And if you look on Gucci products, they're now re-releasing their Gucci sunglasses. And they have this little knight with the different suitcases on the side of the sunglasses. And then I started to see, and I said, Gucci of Italy, and I said Gucci has never referred to themselves as Gucci in Italy, it's always Gucci made in Italy. So that was one of the giveaways, but it was the made in England. Gucci doesn't make any of their pieces in England, they're all made in Florence. So I said, man, if it didn't have that made in England label right there, it really would have passed as an original. It's almost as close as an original. And then we have right here, we had one of our registrars actually, and she said, wait, I bought a really, really good counterfeit the other day. Can I put it in the show? And I said, well, actually, we don't have a Louis Vuitton Cerise bag. So I said, sure. So let me take a look at it and let me see how good you think your counterfeit is. So she donated it to our collection, and then I started my investigation. And this one was actually really difficult because this was a collection that Murakami had done with Marc Jacobs for Louis Vuitton. And it did have the cerise, or the cherries, and I said, man, it does actually look really good, and then I started investigating more. So these double cherries here, they actually weren't produced in the double. They had done the double cherries, but not in this style, in different bags. What I had also realized is that Louis Vuitton did not, this is their mini HL bag, this wasn't even in their Cerise collection, so that kind of nullified that point. But also it was the colors in the cherries. Louis Vuitton had worked and had used 15 different shades of the reds, of the greens, and of the blues and the yellows in their bag. So we take a bit of a closer look, then I really started seeing a lot of problems with this bag. If we start on the left, we see that it's not actually supposed to be a tab, it's supposed to be a lock and a hole. And then this, right here, the zipper closure, this is supposed to be, comes all the way here, and then it locks right here. And then we have, we'll see it in a minute, we have an extra trademark here, we have some frayed thread over here. back here, or right here, we have the Louis Vuitton monogram and it's cut off. Louis Vuitton has extreme reverence for all of their textiles and all their fabric. They're never going to cut off the logo right there, so that's always a dead giveaway. And right here, we have the paint. It's crooked. These people are so meticulous that paint the finish on the bags, they would never have it be crooked. And then we see here is the stitching. This is quite interesting in that it depends on what size Speedy you have, but on the mini HL, there should always be 5 stitches that go across right here. So you could actually count, if you happen to still want to buy the counterfeit, you could count. And if it has 5 stitches across the top right here, that's a good sign. And then it's supposed to have, right here it has 6, it's only supposed to have 3, and then it's supposed to only have 5 here, so that's another way to authenticate a bag. And so if we look right here, there's supposed to be a beautifully curved or carved piece right here in the leather. It's missing here, and if you look at the stitches here, these are not symmetrical. So when you're looking at different things, or maybe if you're at a vintage store, check to see if the stitching is symmetrical or not. Here you can see this is an authentic Murakami bag, this beautiful carving right here that outlines the bag. So this is what we want to look for, and then we have 4 stitches here and 4 stitches here. The other interesting thing is I took a look at the mini HL bag, so it's like the mini Speedy. And for this counterfeit, they wanted to make sure it was a really, really functional counterfeit bag. So they had put a pocket and they had put a zipper in an authentic mini HL. There is no pocket because these bags are so tiny. There's nothing that you can actually put in that pocket that would make any sense. But what I thought was quite interesting, they also put a lining on this bag. Any of the Speedy bags, it's just one piece of coated canvas and that's it. So now we get to another interesting tidbit. So Louis Vuitton never puts anything on sale, just so you know. So there's no Louis Vuitton outlets, and also they never put any hang tags on any of their bags. So if you go to a vintage store and maybe somebody left the hang tag in, that's a dead giveaway that it's a counterfeit because they never put that. The price for the bag is typically on a card and it's tucked on the inside of the bag. But if we look at this, it's quite interesting. We have a little swatch, if you're curious. And right here, go back, what this is saying, and we have the translation on the back, it says calfskin leather. All of the Speedy bags are made from one piece of coated canvas, so they aren't actually leather. And then it says that there is a synthetic lining. There's no linings, it's just that one piece of coated canvas. And what Susan Scafidi had said, she said, well, if you're sophisticated enough to start up your whole counterfeit business, you're probably sophisticated enough to turn on your printer and to put a nice little serial number on your tag, or to simply just get a stamp and to stamp these as well. And then we have the back right here of the swatch. So as we get into what's currently going on with different counterfeits and things like that, there was a very, very interesting study, and there was a lawsuit that also resulted in it, and it was with eBay and it was with Tiffany. It was reported that there was a lot of Tiffany jewelry that was on sale on eBay, and it was all counterfeit. Well, they finally did an investigation, and they realized that it was close to, I think, about 70% of the jewelry that was sold on Tiffany, or sold on eBay, was actually counterfeit. So if you can imagine, you go to a marketplace like eBay or Amazon, you expect to get an authentic product, and you're always trying to authenticate what you're purchasing there, and they realized that there was actually a lot of counterfeits that were being sold on eBay. So they realized they had to do something about it. They had to start policing who was selling their products. And if you look on eBay, there is hundreds of pages of how to pretty much authenticate everything. People have done YouTube videos, how to even authenticate MAC makeup. So something that they did is the eBay had collaborated with the Council of Fashion Designers of America for their You Can't Fake Fashion campaign. And what they had done is they wanted to do a public awareness campaign about counterfeits, and especially counterfeit bags. And they had produced these canvas totes, and they said you can't fake fashion. And they also did different designer collaborations. This one is with Catherine Malandrino. So they had sold these bags, and all of the funds had gone to public awareness, and I think back to the Council of Fashion Designers of America to bring more awareness about the counterfeit industry. But what's interesting though, which I did not realize until starting to work on this exhibition, this was one of the ad campaigns that ran in Paris. I think it ran all throughout France, but especially Paris, and they had these huge billboards, and here it's translated, so you don't have to translate in your head. It says, "Real ladies don't like fakes," and it had these all over it. But if you look at the bottom right here, if you buy or if you're carrying a counterfeit bag or product, you could be fined up to 300,000 euro, or you could be in prison for 3 years. That was the maximum fine. So what I thought was shocking here, I said, okay, well maybe if you purchase it, this is if you are a tourist and if you are carrying it in Paris. So note, if you go to Paris, don't carry your counterfeit there. I found that extremely shocking because I didn't know anywhere where you could actually just accidentally maybe carry a counterfeit and you could be arrested. I don't know if there was any arrests that had resulted from this campaign, but they were really kind of putting it out there. And it wasn't shocking to me as much when I realized that Paris still has the highest level of intellectual property protection. If you look at a lot of the companies, if you look at Chanel, if you look at Louis Vuitton, if you look at Celine, they're all based in Paris, and Paris owns a lot of the other luxury companies as well. So they take their fashion and their industries extremely serious, especially when it comes to counterfeiting. So if we talk about some of the ways, what are people doing to combat counterfeits and fake products?